Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of r/slash Tales from Tech Support. In today's episode, we're a multi-billion-dollar enterprise. We know better than you do. Hint, no, you don't. Definitely a developer job. The one where it's up to us to fix even though we didn't break it. I didn't spend 7 years in medical school to fix your. Before we get started, make sure to subscribe so you will never miss a video. So let's get started. We're a multi-billion-dollar enterprise. We know better than you do. Hint, no, you don't. Posting here for the first time in a while, mostly because I want to tell this story. Background: a certain large healthcare company, dollar vendor, offered to migrate us from our on-prem deployment of their software to their environment for a reasonable rate. We agreed because the on-prem server was getting close to retirement, and we were going to migrate them to either a VM or an AWS server soon anyway. There's been no issues with the software or the database itself, and I'm actually quite happy with how it turned out. Main story. Where the problem was with our interface. See, we have a single practice management software, $PM, that ties together our large, multi-specialty practice and the various EHRs our doctors use to keep their records. The idea is that the $PM is the primary patient database, and the EHRs pull data and schedules from it via standard HL7 interfaces. For those not familiar with them, an HL7 interface's messages usually take one of two forms: a text file created by one system and read by another, or a message sent by one system to an IP address and port, where another system reads it. Pretty simple, and it's what connects the world of healthcare tech. While Dollar Vendor was hosted on-prem, a file-based interface was pretty easy to accomplish. $PM sends files to a folder on a file server, and Dollar Vendor reads them from there. With a server that's not hosted on site, Dollar Vendor's people decided that the best thing to do would be to build a VPN tunnel and push the HL7 data to their server via that. Now, we've built out interfaces with outside partners before, primarily to accomplish getting data to and from the labs that test our specimens for us. I've run these projects not once, but half a dozen times in the last 2 years. We tend to do this by sending the message files to our SFTP server and having the other party read them from there via SFTP. It's efficient, HIPAA compliant, and I haven't had a single complaint about it in the 7 years we've been doing this. But no. Dollar Vendor insisted. They fought tooth and nail to get it set up via VPN because to them, that's the easiest way to get an interface up and running. So the $PM rep and I decided to try it despite our misgivings. We got a network engineer to set up a site-to-site VPN tunnel on our firewall, tested it to make sure we could connect to Dollar Vendor's server, a process that took almost a week due to difficulties getting the Dollar Vendor to communicate with the network engineer, and went ahead with the migration as planned. We then spent the next 2 days troubleshooting the HL7 interface, because despite messages going out from our end, the Dollar Vendor wasn't receiving them. After 2 days of back and forth, with Dollar Vendor's people insisting everything was good on their end, despite us being able to ping their server's IP, telnet their port, and even packet tracing to make sure the HL7 messages were actually leaving our server, I ended up receiving a message from their lead that basically amounted to "Actually, we don't know what's wrong and want to do this via SFTP. Well, Lottie frickinda, 20 minutes later, I have the SFTP configured for them, and our $PM has set about reconfiguring the interface to actually do its job. Definitely a developer job. First story from me, might be a bit long but hopefully not too dull. So, doing a short stint heading up digital at a small but renowned local company. We do a lot of work with a huge international broadcaster, and they distribute programs to satellite TV. They got in touch for a favor. We normally deal with technical briefs and design work, but this is an odd one. Head of design, HOD, says yep, no problem. So the issue is when our client sends a new TV show over to a satellite TV company, they sent over an accompanying graphic/show logo which is used for coming up next style overlays, and I think in the EPG. It's a pretty archaic format. It's a low residential GIF format with a 32 color palette that must have certain colors in it. Now normally they use an ancient Mac with some 90s software on to create this file, but disaster, the machine been retired. So armed with this minimal knowledge and a couple of examples, I said, well, okay, we just need to configure Photoshop and they can generate this no problem. I ping it back to the HOD and say, look, it's a Photoshop job, give it your best guy for a day to look at. He's not happy but gives it to the guy who does, well, nothing. I come in early to an RC email from HODCCING, in the MD etc., it's a dev job, not possible etc. Classic FFS right, fine, boot up Photoshop at 8 a.m, God knows why it was on my machine, years since I used it, some googling and testing, and 1 hour later I sent over 12-point instructions with screenshots. Well, that was a mistake. HOD refused to try it and claimed it didn't work etc. I'm pretty busy as I have the next day off, so no chance to smooth things over. I come in after my day off, out of a meeting first thing, and the HOD and designer are both over the shoulder of my junior dev, JDEV, muttering, complaining etc. Poor JDEV is sweating away. Turns out they had taken the opportunity all day yesterday to try to get my JDEV to build some abortion of script to combine images into the format and bundle the correct palette of 32 colors etc. He was barely anywhere, struggling with installing image libraries, and just couldn't make any progress. HOD was furious and stormed over, your devs are rubbish, this is a simple job. etc. I respond, I've sent instructions that are simple enough for client to follow, and they have the software already. You went behind my back and wasted development time. And finally, JDEV is extremely colorblind, that's why he doesn't know what the hell you're talking about. The one where it's up to us to fix even though we didn't break it. I support healthcare software that has interfaces with third parties, e.g. labs, scheduling software, other electronic medical records, EMR programs, etc. I got a case saying that data is no longer transferring to a third party after the customer updated the software of the third party. I figured that maybe the customer built a new server for the new version of the third party's software and didn't know how to change the IP we're sending to. Simple enough, right? The case was put in by Laura, names changed to protect the innocent, and in the case description, she requested that I call Debbie. I figured Laura is some admin telling me to call someone in IT. So, I called Debbie and the phone menu answered. I hung up immediately because it's the third party, and I figured that they won't be able to get me into our software to change the IP, or get me on the server that has our software on it, etc. I called Laura and she asks that I call Debbie anyway. It seems Debbie is going to be able to explain the issue better. But Laura does tell me that they upgraded the third party's software a couple days ago, and appointments haven't been reaching the third party since then. She said a couple days, and I thought today is Monday, so it was probably done over the weekend. About this time, the customer's account rep for our company starts sending out emails. Apparently the customer is going crazy. Note, I've already talked to them, but okay, and we need to escalate this issue. I put off calling Debbie for a couple minutes and email everyone on the thread that I'm working the issue, but just haven't updated the case yet because I'm still working on it. It's not being ignored. To my knowledge, the account rep is just doing their job. So, don't think she was angry at me. In fact, I sent her a quick message on Teams to tell her that I'm calling the third party as requested. While we chatted, she mentioned that the customer updated the third-party software on Thursday, and only now do they consider it an emergency, and have submitted a case. So, it's not just one day of missing data. It's 3. I then called Debbie. She explained to me that the issue is not with the transmission of data. They're getting the data from our software. The problem is that the new version of their software only allows 15 characters for a phone number where they used to have a maximum of 20 characters. The phone numbers we are sending are 18 characters, and that is keeping their software from processing the data files. Note, yes, this is the US and yes, phone numbers are 10 digits, including area code. But we send 111, 222 33 33 see home for instance. That's 18 characters. The interface engine hasn't been updated in a long time, so yeah, it could be better, but I didn't write the code. So, they changed their software to accept fewer characters. Didn't tell the customer this before go live. And now, for some reason, it's up to us to fix it. As of now, I've made the only change I can to shorten the phone numbers. The see home part is no longer appended to the number, so that's within their limit. Our software doesn't have a lot of customization of the data, so it's lucky I could do that. New appointments are being accepted. And I resent the appointments created since Thursday, so all the missing data is there on the third-party system. I didn't spend 7 years in medical school to fix your. Working for a manufacturer of things that were not medical related, I got a voicemail from an MD screaming about some piece of hardware. Your stupid DOESNT work, and your voicemail box is not configured. This was on my personal voicemail, which is configured. No phone number, no name, no idea where the call originated from. The only thing I was certain of is that we were not in the business of making medical instruments of any kind. A few similar messages landed in my V-mail in the ensuing week, until I finally managed to answer one of these calls. After calming the caller down, I pieced together what was going on. The medical device in question was a bit of office automation, nothing patient-facing, thank God. The caller described having trouble with this device and calling the phone number on the leaflet that came in the shipping carton with said device. That phone number was misprinted, and thousands of these devices were shipped with a bogus tech support number. The number printed on the paper was one of my 500 DIDs, coincidentally unused, with no TN and no voicemail box. Those few callers that managed to leave me messages simply pounded 0, until my employer's admin assistants, there were 3 sharing call answering duties, answered. They apparently didn't question why IT support requests were coming in on an outside line, they merely forwarded the call to my number. Until the day I ripped that PBX off the wall, that DN still had an outgoing message in my malodorous dulcet tone. You've reached, please note that we do not make the device for which you are attempting to get support. That company misprinted their documentation and gave you the wrong number. For support on your please call at XXXXXXXX. That was a fun call with their IT department. I decided I should speak tech to tech, rather than try to explain it all to their marketing or quality staff. A few Tales from Tech Support quality anecdotes were shared while we brainstormed the solution on my end, and while she started rattling cages in her own shop.